just gonna wait a couple more minutes. Okay, I think we're gonna start. So, welcome to another episode of Best Practice, a show where we interview leaders in the building industry to unpack the tools, strategies, and tactics they use to run great organizations. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Bryon McCartney. Bryon is a co-founder of ArchMark, a marketing agency focused on architecture firms and their success. Thank you, Bryon, for joining me.
Well, thanks so much, George, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, so the topic we're going to be talking about today is basically branding, covering a little bit about branding, covering a little bit about LinkedIn specifically. But I would love to start off with how, ArchMark, how'd you get started, and maybe give us a little bit of the backstory there.
Yeah, so I've been involved in branding. I would call it creative communications. That's kind of the umbrella that I use. So that my career is kind of I've done a lot of different things over the years. I started out as a print designer. I kind of went into multimedia design, which nobody remembers, but that was a short period, kind of between print and it was the first odes into digital media, and then from there went into internet or web based design and marketing. My first big break was working with Unilever. They're a large company, a worldwide company that creates all kinds of different brands, consumer brands like Q-tips and Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Those are Unilever products, so a wide range of products. And my kind of big foray into the online world was as creative director for an in-house group that really headed up the kind of the first steps for these brands online. So my team and I, basically these brand managers would come in and they say, "What can we do on the web?" And we would basically come up with strategies for them and then execute those strategies. And then from there, I had the opportunity to go to Switzerland. I worked for a big agency there. I was responsible for online communications for General Motors. They were my main client, but we had a lot of other big clients as well. And then in 2003, I left the agency and big business world and decided to start my own firm. And since then, I've had different phases of my career. I was doing a lot of photography and video for a while. Then I came back to the U.S. in 2012. And my wife and we've been working together now since 2007. We started our first agency while we were in Switzerland. And then we came back to the U.S. We kind of started fresh here. I'm in Estero, Florida, which is on the west coast of Florida. And for the past 4 years, I believe, it was about 4 years, we've really been focused on the building industry and really specifically on architects specifically, and helping them to communicate their value, help them to create opportunities to build relationships with the people that can help them get the projects they want and the clients they want. So that's a nutshell, I guess.
Yeah, so that's quite a journey, going from like very large brands,
Yeah.
and making your way back here, ultimately deciding to focus on the building industry. Which
Yeah.
what led to that choice? Out of since you were
Yeah.
so much in CPG, going to build the building industry seemed like a big.
Yeah. So when we moved to Florida, I know that you're from Florida, and you probably know that there's a lot of building that goes on in Florida, a lot of development. And so when we kind of came to this area, we realized that there's a lot of opportunities in that area. And initially, we did focus on, I would say, more the construction, custom home building market. But ultimately, we ended up starting to work with an architect through some connections. We met this architect, and that initial first project was it was really satisfying for us. We really felt that this architect had a very similar approach to things as we did. There was a lot of synergies in our thinking and our approaches, and it led us to further investigate the industry. And as we dug in and started to learn more about architects, we saw a lot of opportunity to help them. One of the big things we did was we actually we evaluated over 450 architecture firm websites. And through that, we discovered that a vast majority of architects really weren't grasping the value of online marketing and online digital marketing. And their websites were really more like brochures or portfolios and really not dynamic and really not helping them to attract the kind of clients that they really want. And so we saw that opportunity, and that just, we just kept digging, right? And keep going, and you find out more and more, and then you start building relationships. And that's really been the focus for us now for the last couple of years. Yeah.
What's the kind of range of firms that you've been working with? Like, is it mostly on the smaller scale, mid-size?
Yeah, it's been a range. I mean, we've actually worked with some solo firms here and there, some people that we know well and who we see an opportunity to help. But we've also, I would say, more of the firms that we work with, the firm owner is probably in mid 50s or older. They've kind of spent at least 10 to 15 years building their firm up to where it is. And now they're kind of looking down the line and they're saying, in 10 to 15 years, I'm going to want to retire. What is my game plan for not only getting my business really, really working in a profitable, sustainable, more resilient way, but also down the road, they're thinking about like what's the exit plan, the succession plan. And so our big pitch is that we want to help you to build up that firm so that you're bringing in the projects that you really want to work on for the remainder of your career, but you're also focusing on building value in your firm so that when you do decide to move on and retire or do whatever you want, you have something of value that you can pass on or sell or go through an M&A or something like that. I will say, that being said, we actually are working with some younger firms as well who are more in what I would call the startup phase and looking at opportunities of how we can help them to really accelerate their growth so that they get to the objectives that they want quicker.
Yeah, and I can imagine. I mean, that's pretty fascinating. That part of marketing strategy is this idea of, well, I mean, having a really solid marketing strategy at any point of the life cycle of a firm is important. But the fact that you're coming in and providing this maybe like a refresh on that strategy for them at a later stage, but with a clear intention of, okay, like we're trying to set you up for something like M&A, which I'd be really interested in touching, kind of circling back on that later. But for these, let's say for the startups, I think ultimately, no matter where they are on the spectrum, and I'm sure you've identified that there's a gap in knowledge about what marketing means, how marketing can be impactful for whether
Yeah.
you're a young startup or a much more mature firm. what are the kind of things that you sort of have to reteach people throughout the process, right? Or teach them it from the very first time?
Yeah, and usually that's the case. It's usually teaching them for the first time because this. I mean, we talk about this all the time. This is not stuff that you learn in design school, right? It's not part of your normal curriculum. So if you're not learning this in the early stages of your career through a mentor or someone else, there's a lot of confusion around the four terms that I tend to focus on, which are advertising, branding, PR, and marketing. Right. So if you don't mind, I just want
Please walk us through,
to kind of delve into that a little bit. So when we're talking about advertising, advertising is really like a one to many kind of. It's not a conversation. It's you kind of blasting your message to a mass audience. Marketing is that more of that one-to-one conversation, and there's a lot of terms that get thrown around in the architecture space, like business development, right? I kind of look at business development as kind of like the early stage of the selling process, where a lot of architects kind of bristle at that. They're like, "Ah, no, it's not that. We're building relationships." Yes,
Sales.
that's what sales is.
Yeah.
But then you have public relations. So public relations is when somebody like an influencer like you, or maybe Mark LePage, who we both know well. That's when they're saying something like, "Hey, trust me, here's a really great architect," and they're referring back to you. So these are the different kind of conversations that you can create in terms of the, let's say, advertising, marketing, PR umbrella. But over all of that, you have another umbrella, and that's called branding. And branding really defines how you proceed on all of those different fronts. So it's really like branding is really the kind of like, and there's maybe other people a little bit smarter than me that have come up with the notion of, there's two prevailing ideas. One is that branding is really about how you're differentiating yourself, how you're making yourself look unique and different from everybody else. The other is that branding is really the perception that is created about you or your firm. So in that context, branding isn't your brand, not branding, but your brand really isn't something that you can tangibly own. It's something that's created by the actions you take. And so when we look at advertising, marketing, public relations, and when we talk about that in the context of branding, we want to make sure that the messages that we're giving out, the communications that we're creating, the conversations that we're having with not only the clients but our partners and other influencers, that all of those are aligned to the brand perception that we want to create. Does that make sense?
No, totally. Yeah, that's really clear. But my question then would be, for let's say a smaller firm, or even in the context of your client base, right? You bring up like four different topics, one of which is like the umbrella that influences all the other three, right? The brand piece is super important. But the question might be, well, where do I ultimately start? And which one of these should I focus on? Because obviously they all involve a different set of prioritization. They have very different tactics, and they just tangibly look and feel different, even from the perspective of expense. Like when some of these are much more cost effective than others. So where would you start with someone in that process for them to understand, okay, what out of these things that I could be doing, what should I focus on?
Yeah. So that's a really good question, and there's a lot of factors that'll go into determining how we would approach that with a particular client. And I would hesitate to say, oh, you want to start here or here or here, without knowing somebody's situation and also knowing what their goals are. Here's what I'll say to that, though, is that a lot of clients come to us and they already have a lot of clarity about who they are, what they stand for, and what they want to create in terms of an experience for their clients. So these three principles we refer to as your purpose. So Simon Sinek would call that your why, right? So why do you do what you do, and what purpose are you trying to achieve? What legacy? Is it a legacy they're trying to leave? Do you want to create amazing buildings that bring people together? Do you want to serve underprivileged people with affordable housing? What is your purpose? Why are you doing this? The second is kind of your promise, right? That's that experience that you want to create for your clients, primarily for your clients, but it could also be for your employees, right? So the third is your position. So what dominant position do you want to have in the market? So what do you want to be known for? What area of expertise do you want to develop and kind of own as your little like we call that the unfair advantage, the things that other people can't easily replicate. So if you're a firm that already has some clarity around those ideas, right, those three core ideas, I would say that the focus probably isn't around like, oh, we need to rebrand or delve into what our brand is. It's more about bringing those ideas to the surface and make sure that they're communicated to your employees, but also to your current clients, to your future clients. And one of the ways we do that is through a process that we call the Clear Story Workshop. And Clear Story Workshop is all about understanding who your ideal client is, and then constructing what we call a client journey. So it's a process that's based on the hero's journey, if you're familiar with Joseph Campbell.
Yeah.
But really what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand the motivations of the client and why they're going to choose one firm over another. What are some of the issues that we can alleviate for them? So we call those the pain points, right? Like what pain can you take away from them to give them trust, or to help them form trust in you and understand that or help them understand that what the issues or problems that they're dealing with are, and that you're going to be able to help them in a constructive way. So that clear story process is really where we typically start with like, as I said, some of our clients are kind of older, they're more established, and so they may have a good sense of these three core principles of the brand. And so that clear story might be a good point to start. If it's a younger firm and they're trying to define that brand, then we would start with our what's called our brand build process, which is really about delving into those three core principles that I talked about. Does that make sense? Is that
so? Yeah, totally. And I mean, we at Monograph we use very similar strategies, and so it definitely resonates with us. And what I really appreciate about what you're talking about is that you're defining a strategy in which to narrow down your tactics. I mean, basically everything by doing the kind of three pillar approach, and focusing, let's say, on your, like, what's your purpose, which is really interesting, because I think a lot of people they might not reflect on that in a way. They might think that's not as tangible of a thing to work on. But what happens by focusing on your purpose is that, like everything else, you're gonna, like, when it's very clearly defined and it permeates everything else that you do, you will find the people that are very interested in what you're doing, and you're right, because from purpose emanates an opinion, oftentimes, a perspective and a passion that people that care about those things will know for you that you are the person to contact for that kind of thing. And one other kind of benefit from that is that you then, so if it's one is like people can find you, one is you then know who to approach. You only want to be focusing on people that help you accomplish your purpose.
Right.
And so it's both a two-way street that helps to really narrow in on basically everything else that you're going to do from then on.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point, right? So if we just focus on the purpose part, right? Having clarity on your purpose is and if you live that to its fullest extent as a firm, right? That's going to reflect in all the things that you do, all the choices you make, the people you hire, the clients you choose to work with, right? And I don't want to overstate, like, there is a reality. You have to pay the bills. And depending
Yeah.
on where you are in your firm's life cycle, you may be struggling to pay the bills, or you may be telling people, no, we can't do that project, right? So as you develop that purpose becomes really important because it helps you make those kind of decisions, right? Does this align with our purpose? It's a very simple question, but it's one that often people don't ask. And that's where we find, quite honestly, when clients come to us, and especially the older clients, what we find is that there's been a history, not in all cases, but in some cases, there's been a history of making choices that don't align with the purpose.
Mm.
And what that leads to is it leads to kind of a commoditization, because you end up competing for jobs that maybe aren't ideal for you, that don't fit your purpose. And this spreads out your expertise and your knowledge base in a way that is counterproductive. It forces you to kind of make compromises to either win projects or to complete them, that you wouldn't have to make if you were focused on doing those things that align with that process, right? Or that purpose. Because the more you focus on your purpose, the better you get, the more expertise you build up, the more experience you build up, and it becomes second nature to do those kind of projects and and fulfill that purpose. Whereas if you're just, kind of getting scattershot opportunities, you don't have that opportunity. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like uh, part of also narrowing on your purpose and everything else that comes with it, right? Even this is exercise of the client journey, which is,
Yeah.
in maybe a concrete example, it would be something like you you're an architect that really cares about, um, let's say, sustainable residential projects, and that's just something that you're really passionate about. You think that
Well, here's an example. I'll just give you an example. We have a client, and they really enjoy working with nonprofit clients, and they have two specific areas. So one is performing arts centers and like theaters and things like that. The other is with nonprofit, kind of. So there's two categories. There's the kind of animal rescue humanitarian type of client, and then there's the what I would call the human rescue kind of humanitarian client. So these clients are both aligned. The I would say that the theater clients are still within this umbrella of like this idea of working with nonprofits and wanting to help them succeed, but they have more clarity on the humanitarian side, where they're really focused on this idea that they want to create these centers, whether it's for an animal rescue nonprofit or for a rehab or recovery type of nonprofit, but they want to create these beautiful centers that are in the wilderness that have, a number of different buildings, create kind of this campus environment that they can design from the ground up, and this is what they've started to achieve a lot of success with. So that's a way of thinking about it. Like that's a really concrete example. They have it all started with their love of animals. The owner has rescued a number of dogs, and he loves, that kind of, be around people who share that enjoyment, and it all kind of started from that.
Yeah, and in that example, what's also great is ultimately because the connection is pretty clear about it being coming from a sense of purpose and then
Hmm.
going all the way to like finding the ideal type of client,
Yeah.
um, and how that's paired up with expertise. But I guess the other really interesting thing about that is um, that I'm sure for the your client on that front, you could probably have developed a strategy just focused completely on how to find that type of customer specifically
Yeah.
for, right? And I'm very curious to understand, like, well, how did you understand how do you find them? Once you understand where your purpose is, how do you start to source for them? Like, what do you use? What kind of channels are you looking for?
You're talking on the tactical side
Yeah.
and the strategic side. Yeah. So the first place we started with that client was actually through those workshops that I talked about. The Clear Story workshop was our kind of starting point with them, and with that process, we kind of learned a lot about it. And here's what I would say is at the beginning of that process, it wasn't clear what, they had an idea. They knew they wanted to work with more nonprofits, but as we went through that process, it became clearer and clearer and clearer the specific types of nonprofits they want to work with, right? And then once we got through that process, so we looked at what are the next steps? What do we need to do? One of the things that we needed to do was to revamp their website. They had an outdated website that needed to be updated, modernized. It wasn't getting them any SEO, search engine optimization value. They weren't getting found easily online. And so we started with that. So we took what we learned in the Clear Story process and then applied that to the process of writing the content for their website and telling the story about them, and defining what kind of content we were going to have on the site. Then once we got the website done, we started looking at, okay, how are we going to connect with these types of clients? What are the best ways to do that? Now, in our experience, we do a lot of work with our clients, and there's usually I will say that there's a couple of things that we'll identify that usually tell us which direction to go. With this client, it was pretty clear after a little bit of initial research that we could reach quite a lot of their potential clients and the people who influence those potential clients through direct outreach on LinkedIn. So that's where we went with them. And I'm really happy to say that that was a good choice because within 2 weeks, we were able to land them a $6 million project with a nonprofit animal rescue client. And they're currently in the process of they've done the master plan now, and they're moving on to the different stages, and it's really exciting to see that happen. I mean, it's really happened pretty quickly, and at the peak of COVID here. So I
That's
was
really
I was
well.
really happy to see that result for them, and I'm really proud of all the hard work that they put into it, along with us, to really be able to get to kind of reach out to that. We were able to help them make that connection with that client, and that it just happened so quickly, and it's just been a huge success story. So yeah.
Someone asked a question, which would kind of dovetailing into this, which had to do with maybe to summarize it, it's more about the questions focus on like the addressable market of a specific type of client. So in this case, it's a very specific type of animal rescue, right? Type of
Right.
organization. You know, they're probably within the vicinity of the area that this your client could operate in, right? They might only have a license in one state. That narrows down the number of people that they could address, right? Or in their market. So, how do you go about understanding the total addressable market on that front, and then with your client to help them because all this gets to is like, there's only a limited amount of people that might be in a certain type of demographic.
Yeah.
They might not always be looking for the next campus to build out.
No, you're
So
right.
how do you help a client identify the, let's say, the triggers or the early signs that a potential customer might want to need an architect or understand it? Yeah.
So, so let's be real about something. Now, this in this case that I cited, we were in the right time, right place, right message, right? And that's not going to happen every day with every client, right? It's a some things aligned for us to be able to have that kind of success. But here's the thing, the fact that we went out and started helping them to communicate very clearly what it was that they wanted to do and the type and target that message to a type of client that they wanted to attract, that that really helped move this forward, right? In a way that doesn't normally happen because most architects, to be honest, in our experience, aren't specifically communicating what they do, the value of what they do, and who they do it for, right? So so I would say in answer to that question, yes, you have a question of like the addressable market, right? Our our approach and when we work with clients, we always tell them the same thing. Marketing is not something that happens overnight. You're trying to create relationships. You're trying to, well, even less than that. You're trying to just create the initial conversation. You're trying to open the door for them to have the opportunity to build a relationship, right? So that can take time, and as we know, the life cycle of a project, even the life cycle of starting a project, it can be immediate, it can be years, right? So the more relationships you're developing at an earlier stage, the more success and more opportunities you're going to have. And that's what we really focus on. Now, to get more specific, yeah, we looked at like I said for example, this client wanted to do animal rescue, right? And they don't limit themselves to just Florida, right? They're licensed in a few different states, and they've worked with other architects to fulfill projects in other states that they're not licensed in. So for them, they didn't see a limitation of just working in Florida or just working in their area in Florida. But we did a very short. I spent maybe a couple of hours on LinkedIn looking at how many people could I find that were directors of animal rescue centers in the U.S. and I found nearly 200 in an hour in maybe a couple hours. So that tells me that this client has found a really good opportunity to build, like they will have a great opportunity to work with multiple clients. And yeah, a lot of those actually were in Florida. I mean, when we were going through those, I was surprised how many were in Florida. But yeah, so I don't know if I completely answered that question, but
Well,
I think that gives you a better oversight of how we approach it and where the opportunities can lie, right?
I mean, what I like that you're highlighting is, LinkedIn as a vehicle to source potential leads,
Yeah,
and how powerful that is because it definitely depends on who your target customer is. Again, resonating back to your purpose, right? Like
sure.
if like you're a person that has just so much expertise in residential, and that is a place that you like to play in,
Yeah,
it's likely that you're not going to need you might not look at LinkedIn as a proper place, depending on like who you're targeting, because you could also target by like
well,
actually no, you could definitely target by not only title but also the types of companies that have people who may need
so
service.
can I
Yeah,
give you another example?
sure.
So I have a potential client out in the Bay Area, and so they do high end, I would call them designer homes, right? Custom, architecturally designed homes, and their target audience is VCs
Yeah, yeah,
who are founders or CEOs, and also doctors, and doctors. I'll call it doctors, dentists, and lawyers, high earning professionals, and so we've developed personas for these two audiences, and there's a lot of crossover as well, but we have a very clearly defined idea of who these people are, even down to the kind of cars that they would have in their garage. So it's
yeah,
very,
yeah,
and you can use that information to then go on LinkedIn and say, okay, VCs, technology, and then sort out like who are the leaders in this space, who are the founders, who are the CEOs, who are the people that we want to talk to, and it's very doable,
yeah,
even in
yeah.
residential.
No, yeah. No, as I was saying that, because
You were thinking it
well,
already.
yeah, because I mean, Facebook is obviously another vehicle, and Instagram is
Sure,
is part and parcel with Facebook in some ways, because you can deploy ads on both platforms in one sitting. Um,
absolutely.
but all these are different channels that you can use depending on reinforced when you really have a clear understanding of what your purpose is, the kind of products that you like to operate in, so you can
Yeah,
hone in on a specific message, right? For
right. And I'm not trying to argue that LinkedIn is always the answer. It's not. The reason that LinkedIn works, especially for like commercial or institution, governmental, that kind of stuff, it works better for those audiences because people are on LinkedIn are expecting to get contacted for business purposes,
yeah,
right? So they already have an expectation that they're going to be contacted on LinkedIn. I would say that for some clients, looking at something like Facebook or Instagram might be a better option, but it's also a different approach because
yeah.
you're not approaching people with this business mindset.
And also, and to be clear too, like with Instagram, well, with these two other platforms, they have their own logics that are
Exactly.
effective for them. So like Facebook, you don't just add a friend, right? You don't reach out to a
Right.
potential client, like try to add them as a friend. It's likely that
Right.
you'd have to like run ads against that type of audience in
Yes.
order to kind of capture their interest. And oftentimes what you're doing at that point is not even trying to give them it's like, hey, you don't want to say like, hey, hire an architect today. It's probably more
Right.
aligned to a pain point that they have before they
Yes.
even think to hire an architect. So you would like put an ad to like a blog post that talks about how to find the perfect home, which is more
Right.
about setting the
Yep.
table in a way
Yeah.
for like your services later.
Again, it's just getting that foot in the door to have that conversation, right? And I think you're absolutely right about that. That's and a lot of people, we get a lot of architects that ask us about Instagram. "Oh, I've heard Instagram's great, and it can be great. And I think what Instagram's really good at helping you do is build a following, right?
Mm.
So what happens when you build a following, right? And when we talk to our clients about our approach to marketing, as a rule, there's three areas that we focus on. Number one is increasing your visibility. People in the marketing world will call this building brand awareness, right? The second one is increasing your influence and your authority. So this is kind of the content marketing part of it, where we're creating content that helps position you as an expert, helps people to identify you as somebody who has a lot of knowledge, expertise, and experience within a certain sphere, right? And then the third area is in what I would call the finding, connecting, and attracting your ideal target audience, and that's more the traffic generation part of it, right? So I think Instagram can play a really key role in that kind of building awareness, and then the building authority, building influence, and I do believe it can also help contribute to the traffic generation. But keep in mind, it's a different approach than LinkedIn. With LinkedIn, we create a list of people that we feel satisfy certain criteria, and identify them as either potential clients, potential strategic partners, or potential influencers, or what we call promoters. So we're trying to connect with those kind of people on LinkedIn. And so we're directly targeting those people and then sending them messages that are directly aligned with that purpose, and showing them, hey, we have this purpose, we have this experience, we have this expertise, we know how to do this type of thing. And when you're ready to do something like that, we're the people to go to, right? So with Instagram, I would say that Instagram's more akin, and this isn't a one-to-one comparison, but it's more of a blend of the, as we defined earlier, the advertising approach and the marketing approach, right? You're having this platform where you're trying to reach a large number of people and then draw them into conversations, right? And doing that within the brand umbrella, right?
Right.
So it's a little bit of a different approach, and whereas I see Instagram more as a numbers game, where I see Instagram where I see LinkedIn more as a targeted kind of more precise approach. Does that make sense? Do you agree
No,
or disagree with it?
I certainly agree. I think all this is reinforced by the idea of that client journey. So
Yeah, absolutely.
if you're able to map out, I'll kind of walk people through like an example of like a residential client, because I kind of referenced that earlier. So let's say someone is looking to buy a home. It's likely that or to buy a piece of property, they have an idea of a new home they want to live in. Oftentimes, and we can even use ourselves as examples of how we typically go about it. Oftentimes, we're not looking for the architect as the first step. They
No.
come way downstream in a series of other, let's say, more information gatherers. So
Yep.
like typically what you do is like you'll go on Google, search for, how do I buy a piece of property? Because that's the first step, right? You got to figure that out. Meanwhile, you have all these people between your client and the architect, right? That are like the broker that comes in and advises on a certain thing. But all through that whole process, there's actually touch points, questions that people are asking of Google in Google and other channels,
Yes.
of like, to understand the entire process. And if like an architecture firm, right, maybe so someone asked like what approach a 6-person firm might do in a small market, you might want to focus on writing content that helps advise people on how to buy a piece of property in your
Right.
specific market, because there could be
Yep.
specific zoning requirements, things that they
Yep.
need to look out for. And by doing that, you're establishing expertise and building trust,
Yep.
which over time makes you a no-brainer to approach for your services.
That's exactly right. And we have another client who is a residential home designer architect. They do they do interiors, they do ground up buildings and all that. But they she's really specific. It's Sanibel and Captiva Island, Florida, right? So if you're familiar with that, it's not a big place.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people who come here to purchase property on Sanibel or Captiva, or they purchase an old house that they're going to tear down and they're going to rebuild. And she has positioned herself, and we've helped her to do this, but she has positioned herself over the years as the authority on how to build a modern custom home that really fits in that environment, right? And her audience is very specific. She is looking for people who have, the means. These are usually people who collect art and have, work with a financial advisor on a regular basis to manage their wealth. And so she's got a lot of potential touch points. She's got relationships with realtors on the island, with bankers on the island who are, approve loans and things like that, title companies, and all kinds of other touch points. And basically, when the questions come up,
Yeah.
like who would you recommend or whatever, they all say, yeah, you want to go with her because she knows how to build you the right type of home.
Yeah.
Now, if they're looking for a Spanish style, kind of a place that is very typical down here,
Hmm.
she's not going to go for that, and that because it's not part of her purpose.
And it's yeah, and like there's another concept associated with this that I really I thought a lot about, which is this idea that architects are actually content generators in
Oh, they
general.
are.
And so when you look at it from that perspective, you're constantly generating content, and there needs a track. Like
Yeah,
if people can see from your body of work that there is a clear line,
yeah,
and it's very clear for them to understand, oh, okay, this is the person I need to go to for this.
yeah,
It's you from the firm owner position, you might feel uncomfortable with that because it feels like you're letting opportunities slip in a way. But
mm,
what actually does
yeah,
happen is maybe is the reverse. People know that you're the go-to person for this, and if you pick something, if you pick a sort of if your passions align with a large enough community, you will be found more often than not
yeah.
through all these touch points that you're mentioning.
Well, here's a good example, and I'll use myself as an example. Right, years ago when we first moved to Florida, it was about 8 years ago before we started working with architects. We came here, and okay, I told you a little bit about my background. My wife has a similar background. She ran she was actually the reason we went to Switzerland was because her PR firm elected her to go start their European operations in Zurich, and so that was how we got the opportunity to go there. But she has this incredible background and experience. I have this incredible background and experience, and when we came here, we thought, oh, it's going to be so easy to get clients. We'll just talk about all the great things that we've done, all the great clients that we've worked for, and it'll be a no-brainer. But what we didn't realize is that, we were just kind of really just trying, like anybody could be a client to us. And that didn't make us special, right? In the eyes of those potential clients. They didn't see us as real experts. And what we learned was that the firms here locally that were doing things the right way, they weren't necessarily narrowing down on lawyers or real estate agencies or anything like that. What they were doing was they were specialists in working here, right? And knowing, having the relationships here, and because they had grown up here, they knew everybody, right? So they had this kind of built-in network. They knew who everybody was and how to get things done, whereas we didn't have that advantage, and that really played a role in us deciding to narrow down and focus on a niche. But the value of having a niche, and this is the thing that people always say to me, they're like, oh, well, if I focus on a niche, that means I'm going to not get these other opportunities. That is not the case at all. We get other opportunities all the time because of the expertise that we have with architects. People say, oh, well, you do that for architects. I bet you could do that for me. The difference is we have the benefit of being able to say, no, that's not a good fit for us. If it's not, if it's truly not a good fit,
Right.
but if it's
Right.
something exciting and it's something that we really want to do, yeah, we're gonna go after that. And I think architects have the same opportunities.
Well, that's a really helpful example from cut from your own story.
Yeah.
I think so. We have some time for a couple of questions, and then we'll kind
Yeah.
of go. If there aren't any, I might just go into like a little lightning round here.
Oh, somebody's got to have questions.
Okay, I'll just start here. So this is part of a lightning round. So these are a series of short questions with hopefully short
Yeah.
answers.
Okay.
Um,
I'll try.
What are your favorite tools to use right now?
You mean like technology tools?
Yeah.
My there's two. I'll mention two. One is called Descript. It is I, it's really a hybrid tool. So it's a tool that allows you to take audio and video, upload it into Descript, and then it will automatically transcribe everything. And then you can basically I use it for everything. I use it for meetings. I use it for interviews with
That's
clients.
great.
I use
Yep.
it for
Yep.
content generation. And once everything's transcribed, you can actually copy and paste the text into what are called new compositions, and then that audio goes along with it. So you can basically edit your podcast, your client interview, whatever you want in text, and it works brilliantly. It's a really cool tool. The other one is called Phrase, Frase. I think it's phrase.io. It's a tool for people who want to generate content. So one of the big hurdles of content generation is doing the research and figuring out what other people have written and kind of getting the idea engine running about what you want to say. Phrase is a tool that you can put in a search term, a question that a client might have, or a Google search that you want to rank for. And Phrase will help do that research for you and provide you with sources, including questions that people ask, other articles that have been written, so you can kind of see what has been written and make something unique. And it will also give you it'll pull statistics out of those articles so that you can refer to in your own. So a really great tool. And that one, by the way, if you're an AppSumo person like I am, there's a deal currently on AppSumo for that.
Oh,
And
that's great. Yeah.
I don't have an affiliate link, so
Yeah,
but
yeah.
this is just a freebie.
No, we are looking at Descript for turning this into a podcast
Yeah,
and some other related
Descript
content.
is
Yeah.
awesome. And if nothing else, just go watch their promo video on their website. It is so cool. It's a lot of fun.
Okay, so here's another. Can you tell us the nicest thing anyone has ever done for you?
Ever done for me?
Yeah.
Boy, that's hard. I've been really blessed in my life to have a lot of people be generous and giving to me. I think wow, that's a deep question, George. And
I know. I like to throw the one at the last one because it doesn't
yeah,
sound like a lightning round question, but it gets the.
yeah, that's a really if I'm so I'll try to make this quick. When I was 1 year old, I had an accident and I was burned. I lost about a third of my scalp. So actually, I wear a hairpiece, and I grew up with a lot of kids teasing me and bullying me and things like that. And my mother's had a number of different relationships, which I'm not going to go into. I'm not going to judge her or anything like that. But uh, I had a rough childhood for a while, and she finally married someone that who's very helpful to me in my life, and helped me see that I was worth a lot more than I thought of myself at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I think really changed things for me. It came at a pivotal time in my life. I was 14, 15 years old, and having somebody kind of lift me up and say, you're a good person and you're worth the things that you get in life. That was really a big change for me.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah. It's always good to. I like that question because I think it's really great to kind of reflect a little bit
That's a
on
and that just like
on,
if you're not ready for that, you're like, oh man. That's a
yeah.
good one.
I'll figure out when I can answer that one at some point. So yeah, we're close to time, and since there are no other questions, love to just roll out the red carpet for you. Let
Yeah.
everyone know what you're working on, what's upcoming for you.
All right. Well, before everybody logs off, I want to let you know that I'm going to be co-organizing the Architect Success Forum. That is taking place September 21st through the 25th. We have 12 different sessions, so we have 10 expert speakers and 2 panels, and all of these people are architects, marketing, branding, copywriting, lead generation people. So there's going to be a ton of value in this event. All our speakers are going to be sharing their best practices for branding, communication, marketing, lead generation, website design. And that event, if you go to, you don't need a www, it's just forum.archsuccess, A-R-C-H, success.com. If you go to that website, you can learn all about the event. You can see who our speakers are, and you can sign up. You can attend 3 sessions over the week for free, or you can get our VIP ticket for $197. That gets you access to all of the speakers. It also gets you recordings of all of the presentations. And then there's some additional freebies and giveaways that some of our speakers are going to be providing as well. So that would be that's my last hurrah there, is plugging that event. We're really excited about this event. We've got a lot of interest in it already. The other thing is that if you want to learn more about ArchMark and maybe read some articles on our blog, please go to archmark.co. And you can find out a little bit more about what we do and some of the things that we find important for architects. And then if you want to connect with me directly, I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn. To get to my profile, it's really easy because I made it really easy. Type in Brilliant Bryon, and I spelled my name a little bit differently. It's Bryon with a yo, so it's Bryon, brilliantbryon.com. And that'll take you directly to my LinkedIn profile. And just when you connect with me, send me a little message and say, "Hey, I saw you on the Best Practices webinar with George and Monograph." So that'll let me know that you were on here and that you saw this. And then I'd love to hear what you thought about this past hour, and hope that it was worth your time.
Thank you so much, Bryon. Just to confirm, it's forum.archsuccess.com. I'm just going to type it in here as an answer to the Q&A.
Yes. https:// and then forum.archsuccess.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, there you go, folks. Thanks so much for joining. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, if you're a firm owner or a project manager and are interested in understanding where you are with a project, basically time versus budget. We know that a lot of firms struggle with understanding where they currently are on a project budget. Try Monograph, where we have a free trial and you can sign up today. Bryon, thank you so much for joining me again. This was really fun, and I actually would love to have you again to talk a little bit more about marketing, which is one of my own personal
George, you can ask me anytime, and if I don't hear from you for a while, I'll bug you.
Perfect. Well, there you go, folks. We have a date scheduled sometime in the future. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Love it. Thanks, George.
Cheers.